Hey everyone, welcome back to Joy at Work. It's December 11, 2020. Hope you're all doing well. Today's video is a short tribute to my grandfather who recently passed away, and his funeral was yesterday, December 10, 2020. Was very close to my grandfather. He's one of the biggest influencers in my life, and so I just wanted to share a couple of things I've picked up from him, or I picked up from him, that I've found very impactful when it comes to my life and even work in general. So the first one is foresight. My grandfather was always thinking about the future and sort of made decisions to future proof himself and his family, if you will. Again, foresight's not really about knowing what's going to happen, it's anticipating what might happen and making decisions to support those outcomes. Not that you know what will or will not happen, but it is being bold, right? So my grandfather sent his children to school at a time when doing that was not really the common thing. I come from a society that is into farming and agriculture, and many of my parents' peers, that's what they did. Many of my dad's peers just grew up being farmers, and those are great professions. But because my grandfather sent his children to school and made sure they had an education, that opened doors for my grandfather's children and his children's children. And so I took from that the importance about foresight, to think into the future, to make plans today for the future. Again, no one can predict the future, but it's been said that the best way to predict the future is to create it. And so the decisions we make today yield a whole bunch of results down the road. And so it's not about now. Sometimes it's about 5, 10, 15 years down the road. So we live in a very short-term society these days where people are making decisions really just for now. I learned from my grandfather that it's not enough to think about now, but you need to think about what's coming down the road. The second thing about my grandfather is he was not afraid to stand out and be different. I picked that up from him at an early age, and I think to a large degree that's something that I've carried with me for most of my adult life. I don't mind being unpopular. My grandfather did never minded being unpopular. He was often unpopular and often a dissenting voice. A very principled man, stood by his principles and always wanted to see people treated fairly and wanted justice, in the community, in the society, in every dealing that he had, and that's something that for me has been important. I've just found it okay being different, not going with the crowd, having a completely different view on life and how to get things done. My approach to many things, even in the workplace, has been considered different, odd, and whatever. But for me, it's never bothered me because progress is dependent on unreasonable people. My grandfather was unreasonable. He was stubborn in a way that, in the way of that, he didn't need to go with the crowd. He was okay, always comfortable with standing out and doing something different. I'm proud of him for that, and I picked that up from him as well. And the last thing I want to just share is my grandfather had a thirst for learning. As an educator, as I've mentioned previously, he made sure all his kids had an education. And then for his grandchildren, he was always on us to continue our education. For me, he just consistently pushed me from, I think, grade school or elementary school or primary school, as we'd say in Nigeria. My grandfather pushed me. He would talk about people in our community who were well educated and what they were doing, and he would kind of continue to challenge me. He asked me incessantly when I was going to go back to school and get a doctorate, and to a large degree, my grandfather is actually why I went back to school and completed a doctorate, and I'm glad I was able to complete it before he passed away. But this desire to learn and to know and to not be satisfied with what knowledge one has already acquired was extremely important to my grandfather. And again, from an influence perspective, I never am satisfied, never been satisfied. Just had a thirst for knowledge, and that comes from him. And I said three, but here's a bonus one, right? Because knowledge is important, but knowledge is distinct from wisdom. And so wisdom was something that my grandfather also had an abundance of. he understood that knowledge was important, but wisdom didn't necessarily equate to being knowledgeable. And so he always told me that, wisdom was something. He was the first person I heard from, actually, that wisdom is the mother virtue. As we say in my language, Izoakalam, let me not lack wisdom. Wisdom was important, and he always told me to take wise actions and do wise things, and don't let too much knowledge stuff get in the way of wisdom. So that's it. Thanks for tuning in. Again, this is a video tribute to my granddad, who I miss dearly, and hopefully some of the things he shared and passed on with me you'll find useful in your journey. See you around. Bye.